Hey everybody, it's Francina Simone, and today we're going to talk about The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart is from the UK, and he essentially went to bed one day miserable, didn't like his life, felt like it was a bit too mundane, and had an existential crisis in bed. While he was having an existential crisis, he surrendered to it, and in that surrender, he found the present moment. So from that day on, he was very present, and so he's been teaching that concept and the importance of presence ever since. I suggest everybody read the book. It's great for beginner work in any type of spiritual awakening, any type of self mastery, any type of alchemy, because it teaches you the importance of grounding. Essentially, being present is a very earth element type thing, it's a very physical thing. It's a thing of matter. And anytime you're present, you are grounding yourself into a reality, which means spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, you are aligning yourself or pulling yourself into time right now. And if you're in time, that means you can do things in time. And if you stack things in time, you will produce something. So for creatives, this is a great way of grounding yourself to be able to actually navigate projects. For people who socialize an awful lot, this is a great way for being able to actually connect with people and discern and have great discernment in your interpersonal relationships. And just for general living, especially if you're like a neurodivergent person, where you're navigating spaces and places that aren't necessarily conducive to your neurodivergence, it helps you center into yourself, be able to identify your purpose for being there, and then be able to navigate or mask in a way that is healthy for you instead of masking as a coping mechanism. And we'll talk about all of that as the series goes on, but I'm essentially using this textbook in the Midnight Scholar Society for beginners and my intermediate level students to be able to understand grounding techniques, one. And two, I expect everybody to read the book. Always practice and use discernment. I'm not actually going to be regurgitating or talking about topics, talking about the book specifically. I'm talking about the concepts in the book as an additional material. So don't be using me as spark notes, in other words. You have to read the material. And if you just need another perspective on it, these videos should like really help, or at least lead you in some type of direction. So the first topic that we're going to cover in video one is the importance of the present moment. So let's talk about what being present is essentially and why it's important. Now, presence is the only true reality. This is a concept from the book, and it is something of a simple truth. But the present moment, or now, is the only reality. Everything else is but an illusion of your projected mind. So, as a human being, you have a psyche, and you also have physical presence. You have both of those things. You have a consciousness, and you also have a physical body that exists in time and in space. And when you align your consciousness with your existence in time and in space, you are present. Your psyche is the holder of all of your mental states of being. You have a spiritual consciousness, a mental consciousness, an emotional consciousness, and consciousness of your physical body as well. And with those are four like planes of existence that we human beings live on. And the more awakened you are in them, the more of a spiritual awakening you are having. So for instance, when you're first born, you're born into physical consciousness. You identify as your body. I mean, like babies, they identify as it and they explore their bodies, but for the most part, they just identify. I don't want to say they identify as the body, but they identify with the experience the body is having. So they go on having experiences with their body to learn their body. And then as you get a bit older, you identify with your material or your mental landscape. And we talk a lot about this with astrology. So of course, if you're into astrology, you want to know the class, the houses. I did a course, houses 1 through 4. They're up on my website, so link down below. But we talk about how the astrological houses kind of navigate us through this. The first house, the second house, the third house. The third house is where you're getting a lot of mental play in the world, where you're understanding your mindset, or I should say, you're understanding the landscape around you using a mindset. In other words, you get to know places, so the types of settings that you can interact with. You get to know the types of characters you can expect in the world. You get to know the types of dramas that you can expect to play out in the world. These are all concepts that are built in a mindset and when you exist in a mental world. So about 0 to 6, you're very physical. From about 6 to 12, you're very mental. And then about 12 to 18, you get the emotional aspect of life where you are unlocking and having an emotional awakening. Now, this is just some concrete, like 0 to 6 is just very like I want to say the general development of human, all of these things are happening all at once. And for individual people, they happen all at different times and stuff like that. This is all just a very like baseline, getting you to understand the sections of childhood development and stuff like that. This is not how everybody's individual reality works out, because you could be 4 and experience a shit ton of trauma and jump up all the way to spiritual awakening. Yeah, you're just seeing it all and getting the lessons of all of it all at once. And that's kind of how life works, is everybody is on their own path and on their own, and have their own experiences, and their awakenings, their inability to awaken, all those kind of things are all based off of what's going on in their individual lives. So this is all general. That being said, after your mental landscape has been developed, the emotional one, this is where we get to like the 4th house. You start developing an inner body or an intuition with your emotions, being able to see how energy exists in you, emotions and feelings, and how they come up in your body and all that kind of stuff, and developing language for it, but also being able to learn how to manipulate it, how your emotions and energies impact other people. And that's the thing. This is when these age ranges aren't necessarily when people become aware of the thing, although it can be, but it's more about how these things are manipulated, the awareness of your ability to do this, my awareness of my mental landscape, my awareness of my emotional capabilities. Some people learn that they can emotionally manipulate people, and they do. Some people learn to do it as a coping mechanism. Some people learn from others. It also depends on the home that you grow up in, and the emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff of the people around you. So being those are the first 3: physical, mental, and emotional. We're going up, and then last is the spiritual awakening, where you become aware of the non-material, that there is something beyond your ego. Previously, you can attach your mental and your emotional landscape to your ego. I feel sad. It depends on the native language that you speak, one, and the philosophy of mind that you grow up in, because every person who, I will put it this way, native languages have different thought frames. So in other words, not everybody who speaks English thinks the same, as in language impacts their brains differently. You learn different vocabularies. If you have a high level of diction and you use a lot more exactness in your words, you're going to think a lot differently than somebody who has a low level of diction, meaning they, use just a very low set vocabulary that, one word can mean multiple things. You have tonal differences, where some words mean multiple different things, but with tone. In some places, you have one word means multiple things, but there's no tone difference. You have to take into consideration context, and not everybody's taking in the same context. English is a very messy language, I'm going to be totally honest. But outside of that, in different languages also have different ways of describing the world and understanding the world around them. So you can teach 3 different people from 3 different regions, 3 different places on this earth, the same language, introduce them to a room, and then have them all describe the room, and they will all describe that room differently. They will think of the room differently. The layout of the room will be different. Some people will describe the room in terms of from the point of view of the exit, and where some people will describe it from the point of view of the center. Some people from the point of view of the front, simply because of their way of relaying information and organizing it in their psyche. So it's it's all different. We all grow up with different mindsets and mind frames and ways of communicating with each other. And the spiritual awareness is breaking away from all of that, no longer being identified to one mind frame or one mindset, but understanding that there are many, and that we use maybe one at each time of many, and that you can also understand many and use many in one time. So that's the spiritual awakening and the beauty of all of that. So the importance of the present moment is being able to recognize essentially the now. And when you are now, you don't have to be confused between your mental space, your physical space, your emotional space, or even your spiritual space. You use all of that information to be able to understand and to integrate it into the experience you are having now. So in other words, you can collect your spiritual inspiration or the compulsions that you have. You can collect your mental or know your emotions, the energy that you were experiencing in the moment and in the room, to help you understand how you are interpreting the now that you are in, instead of identifying with it. And then you can understand the thoughts that are coming up to help you understand how you are identifying with the moment that you're in. As having all of these negative thoughts about this particular instance. um, Maybe you just walk into your house and there are dishes, okay, and there are dishes in the sink and you're tired and you don't feel like doing anything. And then you think, oh my God, I'm so lazy because listen, I left the dishes in there. Are the dishes a problem? Maybe you don't even need to be in the kitchen. Maybe there's just a few bowls or something like that. There's nothing gross or haphazard happening. There's just dishes, and maybe you like to keep things clean. So, is it really a problem? If you sit into the now and you realize that your attention is only on the dishes because you prefer a clean home, but it's actually not a problem because, maybe who knows why. It's just not a problem right now. The problem is actually that you're tired. You can recognize these thought patterns that you're having, especially the things that you identify or internalize. Oh, I'm lazy. Oh, I'm so unclean. Oh, no wonder why I'm having a bad day. My dishes aren't done. And you cannot internalize any of those things and recognize, why am I having these negative feelings about the dishes? What's going on with me? And that what's going on with me, that simple question helps you separate yourself from wherever you are, past or future, most likely with negative language about yourself that's just coming up like a script, that's past behavior. And future stuff is usually when you're trying to avoid or you're fearful of something, like being perceived as messy. So maybe you brought someone home with you, who knows, or you yourself perceiving yourself as messy is something you like to avoid. So you're ping ponging between the past experiences that taught you that you must be clean and you must be tidy at all times, and if you're not, it's a reflection on you. That's a learned behavior from the past. And then ping ponging into the future of not wanting to have to experience that. So I need to keep things clean. Where you aren't is now. And when you're ping ponging between those places and you ask, what's going on with me? You stop ping ponging and you become the observer. You observe this. This one's from the past. Who taught me that? See? And this one's from the future. Why do I like to avoid that? Why does it hold so much significance over my life? Now that you're asking questions, you've removed yourself from from these other conscious states into the now, and then you can either go sit with yourself, maybe figure out that you're tired or dehydrated, right? uh, Help and remedy that issue, and maybe do a little bit of work on some past traumas or something like that. But either way, the importance of the moment, or being present in the moment, is it helps you to identify any of habitual behaviors. It helps you to identify anxieties of the future and the unknown, and it helps to put you in a place of where you are right now, identify the actual problem that's in front of you, so that you can actually put all of your energy into overcoming the problem that's in front of you, and not the made up problems that don't exist. So let's talk a little bit about the mental clarity and the peace that comes from that, and the physical benefits of that. One of the great benefits is you do get a lot more mental clarity when you are in the present, because you are no longer entertaining ideas or thoughts that pertain to anything but what's going on in your present moment. So that means errant thoughts of messages that you have to reply to, conversations you've had with other people, alerts that you've got going on in the back of your mind about to-dos that you have to do. All of that stuff gets silenced, and eventually all of that stuff goes away totally when you constantly are in the present moment or practicing presence. Also, physical benefits, I want to say, is one, it reduces a lot of stress and anxiety and a lot of tension. The issue that most people have, that your anxiety does not come from the things that you have to do. It comes from the fact that one body wants to do it, maybe your physical body that's trying to listen to ego demands. Oh, I have to do these things, otherwise people will be mad at me. And your spiritual body, that's your inner world, that's you, who knows that this thing and trying to make these people happy isn't healthy for you, because what you really want to do is over here. That's when these two things are going in opposite directions. So what creates in the middle there is tension, and that tension is anxiety, that tension is fear, that tension is all negative emotions, essentially, because they're negative because you're in the wrong direction. You're split. And that's an unhealthy and it's being out of alignment. So in other words, if you ever dislocated something, if you've ever sprained your ankle, if you've ever accidentally twerked your finger the wrong way, pain happened because it was going in the wrong direction of the rest of you. And so anytime that happens, you're going to have some type of anguish, whether it's mental anguish or physical anguish. And a lot of mental anguish, which is emotions that aren't actually happening right now, you're summoning them to you to experience, even though they're not happening right now. And by right now, I mean physically, you are in a room by yourself. However, mentally, you're in an argument that you had with somebody 2 nights ago. So energetically, you are calling to you the energy of 2 nights ago, and you are experiencing that energy and experiencing all of the pain of that moment right here, right now, where it's not happening. That's mental anguish. You're experiencing something that isn't real anymore. That's mental anguish. Unconsciously, I should say, is mental anguish. When you are reflecting on those things, which is a healthy time to go back into the past, you can reflect. You aren't reflecting from a place of calling it to you and experiencing it in real time. When you reflect, you're experiencing it from the observer standpoint. Why did this thing happen? Let me talk about this experience with myself. So now when emotions, you call the emotions to you, you're more aware that the emotions are attached to that time and not you here right now. So you can choose to sit in it, you can choose to process it, things like that. And that's called being present with yourself out of time. So present with yourself in the past. Or when you plan things, that can be you being present in the future. You're going to plan to set boundaries whenever this types of conversations come up with any type of person from now on. You're going to plan not what you do with others, but what you do with yourself. So boundaries. I'm going to leave, or I'm going to no longer engage in these types of conversations. I'm going to X, Y, and Z. So you are planning to set boundaries with yourself. That's a healthy thing, but then you let it go. Once you're done being present with yourself in the past or the future, you become present with yourself in the now, which means you bring yourself back to your present moment where you are. I'm no longer in these arguments. I'm no longer in these situations. I'm here right now. These aren't problems anymore. If it comes up in the future, I have a plan of what I'll do. I won't forget, because you don't forget. You don't forget. You don't forget. There's no way to forget. You plotted it out. You can't forget. Next time it happens, what most likely happens, and what people can probably be honest with themselves about, is the shit will happen again. Your mind will pop up and be like, didn't we say we'd walk out? And they'll be like, yeah, but not right now. And then you engage again. So it is important that, like, you allow yourself not only to recognize that you won't forget something. You don't need to be constantly thinking about it. You don't need to stop what you're doing right now and go message that person and bring it up because it's not happening right now. Not really. It is for you, but not for them. So you don't need to react. You've planned a response of how you would like to respond in a way that respects you, your time, and your energy, and then allow yourself to pass that test when it comes, not constantly trying to get the teacher to give you a pop quiz. Yeah, so that's essentially it for the most part. I mean, there's a lot more that goes in with being present and its importance with being present in the moment, and like what reality is, and that your psyche is something different than reality, and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to dive more into a lot of these things as we go. Like I mentioned earlier, the ego and the mind is next. Yeah, where we're going to talk about recognizing the ego's role and all those things. And honestly, this is great companion material to the course I taught in astrology from houses 1 through 4, because house 1 is not necessarily about ego, but it's about self-concept. Now, an ego is when we are tied to a self-concept, or we're attached to a self-concept. So for instance, I'm an author. That's a self-concept. That's just the way that in which I use to organize the concept that I write books and people read them. Yeah, like, my name is on a book, that's it. But there are aesthetics that go into that concept, right? There are ideas that go into that concept. There are storylines. Like, I could be a tortured artist. I could be the the celebrity tell-all author, all that kind of stuff. Those are aesthetics, and sometimes people can get tied to those aesthetics or attached to them. This is my brand, this is who I am, and so this is who I must be every single moment of the day. So that's an ego kind of thing. Not all that's an unhealthy ego, being super attached to it, but an aesthetic and kind of how you go about and how you figure out who you are and how you take action and what your purpose is a bit of self-concept tied with why, your purpose. Self-concept, this is what I do, and my ego tells me why I do it. And so that's how I act in the world. Now, when you become attached to that and that becomes your identity, you can develop an unhealthy ego because you identify as a concept and a purpose, and you are more than that. You just are. You just are. You don't have to be defined. And then we talk about the second house, which is your talents and your skills. This is how you go about doing things and what you have in the world. And then the third house talks about mindset, and we're going to talk an awful lot about that as we go on. And then the fourth house talks about essentially the inner world or the inner body, which is going to be a huge concept here. So definitely check out the astrology course. There's like 8 hours worth of content. It is great. It's amazing. Like I really enjoyed all of it. It also comes with an illustrated guide. So it will really help you along your journey understanding astrology and how astrology fits into these things, because there can be a lot of crazy information out there about it. But the Power of Now is a great, great, great textbook to really start working on to help you ground a lot of these concepts and ground yourself with all of the knowledge that you're gathering along the way. So join us over at the Midnight Scholar Society if you're not all the way already there. Go ahead and join my free newsletter down below. Also like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Stop for now. Bye.